Great. We'll be going live now.
Yeah.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome all our panel speakers and live viewers to this discussion today. I am Aditi, your moderator for today's session. I'm founding member and manager programs for Me Green India, and I'm also an emotional strength coach and NLP practitioner. I'm very excited to host this esteemed panel on behalf of our organization today. Me Green India. Me Green India is a professional coaching and organizational development consulting firm with a mission of 21st century skill development and career sustenance in the world of work today. Let's come to our topic today. I thought I'd listen, bad listening and consequences. We are all set for another very interesting panel discussion on one of the most commonly known yet very difficult to display power skill, that is listening skills. Very quickly now, I'll start with the introduction of our panel speakers. First, I will start with you, Krishnan Raman. Krishnan, as much I got an opportunity to know you, I found him very generous and a kind person. His clients like to engage him for his integrity, simplicity, transparent communication, and commitment to achieve expected results. They respect him for his in-depth knowledge and the way he brings new insights that facilitates a quick shift in mindset. He breaks down complex things into simple processes that makes it easier to master new techniques. Now, not to mention, Krishnan is an experienced coach, mentor, consultant, facilitator, and a keynote speaker with more than 25 years of experience in enabling leadership and at all levels across India and other parts of the world, about 18 countries. I'll welcome Neha now. I'm happy to see Anirban is also here. That's great. Neha is a corporate trainer with over 19 years of work experience with extensive involvement in varied industries. She has been a part of learning and development and has established her expertise in varied fields of training like voice and accent, various soft skills, leadership, behavior, and experiential learning. I'll quickly go to Anirban now. Welcome, Anirban. Well, Anirban is an amazing human being with a very pleasing personality. He holds 30 years of experience across multiple industries, verticals, and functions. Founding and managing director of Corporate School, a consulting firm offering custom solutions in leadership and development, executive coaching, and much more. Ajanta Padar, very cheerful and a person with a beautiful smile, holds 19 years of training experience in various corporate sectors. She is a certified language trainer who has successfully trained upskilled more than 2 lakh trainers and professionals. I'll go to Jaspriya. Jaspriya, determined and strong individual, being a TEDx speaker, also NLP practitioner and emotional wellness coach. Holds multi-dimensional approach with 20 years of experience of working extensively with various organizations across industries. Now I will take the privilege to introduce our industry panel speakers for today's session. Swagata Samadar Saxena. She's presently Senior Deputy General Manager, HRD in Bharat Heavy Electricals Limited, Bhopal Unit, BHEL. She's accredited EI facilitator from TIS, Tata Institute of Social Sciences. She's trainer and faculty for BHEL's flagship programs, Winning Together and leader as coach, Grow Model, along with many other behavioral skills. Welcome. With this, I will welcome all our panel speakers. And now, I also request our live audience to keep sharing their questions over the chat. I will take those questions later, closer to the session's end. Also, please do not forget to subscribe this channel in order to not miss out any more informative and educational discussions like this one. Now, passing the control to the founder and the CEO of Me Green India, Ms. Deepa V. Mukherjee, recipient of coveted Indian Achievers Award for outstanding professional achievement and contribution to nation building. She is an industry veteran, featured in several media publications, been awarded many times for her contribution to the field of training and development, and recognized as one of the top 100 top HR tech minds, and most fabulous training and development leaders in India. That's you, Deepa, over to you.
Sure. Thank you so much, Aditi. We've been enjoying some lovely discussions while we were waiting for the session to begin.
Right.
And this happens to be also the last session of our season 1 of Career Derailer series. So I'm really looking forward to making the most out of it. We've had some, I think, 3 very interesting, powerful discussions and deliberations in the last 3 weeks. And we got to the opportunity to actually celebrate and acknowledge the soft skill specialists, whom we call the unsung warriors of career sustenance, because they have dedicated their professional lives to support others in their career journeys. So we really wanted to and create a platform where we could celebrate their presence in the industry. And that's what I think we've tried and tried to do in the last 1 month. And we're happy that we could also create one of these rare platforms where these people actually come together and do some knowledge sharing and come out with new solutions when they work as a collective, rather than when they do it as their own in their individual capacities while working with their clients. I think the kind of topics that we've chosen in the last 3 sessions have also been really, really pertinent, and issues in the workplace which we felt had got loose ends there, which were unresolved and which required a collective thinking, possibly looking out for more sustainable and holistic solutions. And we do hope that those sessions generated a lot of, at least we learned from it together when we were discussing. And hopefully the audience and people who get to see that in the future also get to use those insights as actionable items for them in their career journeys and their professional journeys. I think our topic today is yet another issue of the same kind. And probably it's going to take us a little closer to something which we've all been living as. Most people, I would say majority, are living with an unconscious incompetence. And that's what this topic today is going to take us closer to. And a lot of this unconsciousness to this whole competency gap that we have has got to do with a false belief that many of us are living with, that we are competent on that space. It's not that we haven't heard the word listen. The first time when we went to school, the teacher said listen to me, and the parent said listen to me. So we all know the word right from childhood, and so we all believe that we know how to listen. And the fact that there is much more to what we really think we know as listening is what is generating that whole unconscious incompetence in the society. So what we intend to do is we spend this time, 90 minutes that we have together, going a little deeper into this subject and figuring out as to what really are we losing out because of. Why is it that we have this unconscious incompetence, and why do we believe, and why are we living in that pseudo competent state for so long, of believing that we know listening, but there is more to it that we realize. What are the repercussions because of this state in which we are living in the society? And because of those repercussions, what are those opportunities that we are losing out as individuals as well as organizations? So that's what we will try and delve into in today's discussion. To start off, I will give some context and background, which would probably help us in setting the tone for all the areas that we want to examine. I think oral communication is something that is considered as a foundational competency for any organization to start with. When the moment you form a group of people, starting off a company, you know that the most foundational thing that we need is the ability of these people to be able to converse, talk to each other, communicate, and coordinate activities. So the fact that oral communication is a fundamental foundational competency requirement in any organization, I think cannot be debated, and it is well accepted across the industry. Both individuals and organizations believe that this is something that we need to develop and we need to have as a competency to survive in a world in the professional world. So there is no doubt on that. But what is interesting is to note that within oral communication, we have these three main components of presenting, conversing, and listening. If you really go deeper into what oral communication is all about, and as coaches and trainers, we all know it, that there is an aspect of presenting, there is an aspect of conversing, and there is an aspect of listening. All three of it go into oral communication. Now, there have been several studies across the world in various organizations, multinational companies, where we've gone deep into understanding what is really valued within communication and what is really looked at. And the interesting fact, which brought us to actually pick this topic for discussion as an issue for Career Derailer, is because of this revelation that comes from all these studies, which says that there is an inverse relationship between what is valued and what is focused on when it comes to communication and verbal and oral communication. Now, if I had to elaborate on that a little bit, it is, when I say inverse relationship, what I try to say is that when it comes to what the organization values, the order of importance goes to the for number one or rank is for listening. What is most important within oral communication? An organization values listening at number one. Number two is conversing, and number three is presenting. Now, even if we were not to get into those scientific studies that have gone, even if we were to just look at any real life situation, or in common terms, practically also, if we look at the first time a person joins, the basic ability that he needs to have is able to listen to what we are giving as an assignment and to comprehend that and to be able to translate that. And then his ability to converse and ask for clarifications if there is any. And there are a few people who will graduate to presenting their own ideas and thoughts. And that's how they grow also as in their professional journeys. So it relates, what the studies are saying in terms of what is valued, it relates to what really happens at workplaces also. And practically it is understandable. But the interesting thing is what they are focusing on, and what we are focusing on as organizations and individuals is just the opposite order. It's an exact opposite order. The entire focus is for number one, when it comes to focus, is on presenting, then it's conversing, and then it is listening. And there could be various reasons to it. The simplest being the fact that it is easy to see how well a person is present, even whether it comes to, when I say focus, it means when I'm selecting people, or when I am recruiting, or when I'm developing my efforts on training and development, all of that, it's more going in the order of presenting, conversing, and then listening. And the reasons could be as simple as the fact that, it is easy to measure and see and how person is presenting than it is to see how well is he listening. So and the other important thing is that it's a well-known fact that we, as a society, we know much less about listening as against how much we know about presenting and speaking and all. There is more that has happened on that front, and there is very little that has happened on this front. As a result, so there could be many other reasons, but these are definitely very visible reasons, probably, which is leading to this inverse relationship that we have between what we value and what we are focusing on. And that precisely is the trigger point for us to pick this as a point of discussion for today's Career Derailer. Because of the fact that what is important to us and what we're focusing on is completely different, there are definitely things that we are facing as consequences. And that's what we will try and examine as a panel today. And one of those few thought leaders who throw some light on the subject called listening is Stephen Covey. He's one of those initial thought leaders who brought some attention. And we have an ardent Covey practitioner with us here today, Krishnan. So I will start with Krishnan. And Krishnan, you've kind of spent a lot many years practicing many of the Covey principles, and therefore I'm very attracted to start the discussion with you only, where I want to understand from you, in your experience, what probably could be the reason that we're all living in this state of pseudo competence at all. Why do we are not able to understand whether that we have a competency gap here. And because of that, what are the consequences you're noticing individuals are dealing with, as individuals as well as organizations? I think organizations also listen, but they believe that they listen, but they really don't know whether they listen or not. So in your understanding of all the Kavi's principles that you've been applying all your life, please throw some light on this aspect. Why do you think that there is this false competency feeling that we're all living with?
Thank you, Deepa. You gave a very good start where you gave the reason for that, that in school we are always taught how to read, write, and speak. And formally, so much of training is given for that. But when it comes to training in terms of listening, we are not really trained. We are just told to listen. It's like pushing somebody in water and saying, just swim. How do they really learn that? So that's the whole challenge. So I'll share a very interesting incident. This happened while I had actually started teaching the 7 habits. My children were small. Now my daughter is 25, son is 23. So I'm talking many years back. And my son had a teacher who would write his homework every time. And a new teacher came, and this new teacher would not write the homework in the diary. So my son had to come and tell us what the homework was. And sometimes he would miss that. And if he missed a homework, she would write with a red pen, homework not done. So a lot of parents, they complained and they said, in the PTM, Krishnan, you come and talk because you can speak well and you should give a good feedback to them that the new teacher is not doing her job properly. So I said, okay. So I represented those parents. I went and I told the teacher how the previous teacher was, taking care, writing the homework, and why this teacher is not doing it. So it is like a complaint to her. She listened to me very quietly, and she said, sir, there's a reason I don't write the homework. But while she was saying that, I was already judging her that, she's coming up with some kind of, reason to justify her actions. So I said, okay, go ahead. Why don't you write the homework? She said, sir, I read a book called The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And Dr. Stephen Covey says that in school, they don't teach listening skills. So I thought, let me teach listening skills. So I tell the students that I'm going to tell you what the homework is today. Listen to me carefully and go and tell your parents what the homework is. So over a period of time, I'm trying to understand who's a good listener, who's a not. So it's just a methodology that I'm trying to teach the kids. That's the reason I don't write, sir. By the way, what do you do? I felt like hiding under the table because I realized I had just violated habit 5. Yeah, I did not listen to her. So it's a very tough habit. And Dr. Stephen Covey himself writes in the book, he found that the toughest habit to practice. But yes, we all think we listen, but if we actually ask people, how many of you are great listeners? Very few hands go up. So we all know that we don't listen well. I was also curious why it is the 5th habit, why not the earlier ones? Similarly, if you see the concept of speed of trust, his son M.R. Covey wrote a book called Speed of Trust. There are 13 behaviors of high trust, and listening is the 11th behavior. So then I realized that listening is a skill, but there's a muscle to be built before the skill has to be learned. So imagine somebody has to learn football. So one is the football skills, but then there is the strength of the legs. The muscles also need to be built. So we all know there is something called a muscle memory, and that becomes automatic. Then I learned there are 5 levels of listening. You may know this, but as you know this, but this is for the audience also who's probably watching us, that there are 5 levels at which we listen. The worst one I learned was ignoring. So when people are talking to us, we simply ignore what they are saying. It could either be because I have some prejudice, or I could be engrossed on the phone, whatever it could be. That's the worst form of listening. The next level is called pretending to listen, where we really don't want to listen, but we don't want them to feel bad. Then the third level is called selective listening. We just want to listen to what we like. It is also driven by our own belief system, our value system, our biases. The fourth one is attentive listening, where we don't miss a single word. But then even after attentive listening, we may still not understand somebody. So the highest level is empathic listening. And all of us know that empathy is putting yourself into the other person's shoes. But then I learned that the toughest part is not putting yourself into the other person's shoes. The toughest part is removing your shoes first. Now, that's the tough part. That means, can I remove my thoughts? Can I remove my emotions when I listen to other people? And the muscle memory I'm talking about is something like going to the temple. So when we enter a temple, we don't have to think. We automatically remove our shoes. We get step out of our shoes. So when we listen, do we automatically step out of our thoughts and feelings? I think that's the kind of muscle we need to build in first. So I keep trying to practice this muscle more, then the skill follows through.
Lovely. I think so well put, Krishnan. I think, yeah, you were saying something more.
Coming to the repercussions, as you said, in a personal relationship, naturally, if you don't listen, there are a lot of conflicts. Just Priya, yes, you raised your hands. So should I listen to you now? You want to ask your question?
So she's clapped.
She clapped. Thank you. Uh, so, uh, in a personal life, when we don't listen, naturally there are conflicts, and there's this concept called the emotional bank account, where you make deposits and withdrawals. So each time I don't listen, so I'm making a withdrawal in the relationship that can have a bad consequences. And for the organization, we all know how some great brands have closed down simply because they did not listen to what the customer wanted, and they thought that they knew what was required. So this reminds me of the anecdote where a small child was asked, what is the definition of a sweater? The child said, a sweater is a garment I have to wear when my mother feels cold. So, so she says, beta thand ho gayi, sweater pehen lo. So
So
we all have very good
mothers can
intent.
really relate to it, the kind of cries that we've seen.
I think what comes in the way of listening is sometimes our intent is good. So we want to educate other people, but without understanding whether they really need it or not. And so I would say the pseudo competency is because one is we believe we understand, but we don't. But that's because we are not built the muscle and then the skill. So I would only recommend rather than just building the skill, build a combination of the muscle and then the skill.
Beautiful. I think very well put, Krishna. In fact, what I will probably never forget in what you said is the way you take off your shoes, when you enter a temple. So listening to somebody else is as
Yes.
yeah, it's as profound as getting into the temple, because you're trying to listen to what's happening in their world, and at that time to take off your thoughts and your pre-beliefs and whatever perspectives that you may have, to keep that aside for some time, is what we need to build as a muscle. And I think very profoundly said. Thank you so much for that, Christian. And we'll continue that and move to Swagata, just to look at the perspective in the organizational point of view. Because of our incompetence in listening, what do you observe are some of these consequences that we face as organizations? It could be as simple a situation as a business meeting or a conflict situation where you get to see people not listening effectively, and as a result, what are some of those consequences that we are facing as companies?
Thank you, Deepa. And that the topic is very close to my heart, listening. Actually, I am also consciously always practicing listening, you know, and that this is a very difficult competency, very difficult to maintain the patience and listen. So the basic principle of any industry is to listen to the customer or the consumer for and act accordingly. But however, the notion of listening to its employee for long run success is lost on the way. So we generally actually overlooking our employees' requirement by not listening, and that is costing in the on the long run. So, for example, in any meeting, like any boss, very same experienced person is there, and meeting is going on, a new intern has come, and that person is actually sharing his or her new ideas. So it is very natural that those ideas won't be actually taken or accepted, because that is not confirming to the uh, general trending belief system, like this is how I feel, and there is a tendency to reject also. And so in a way that our own preconceived notions are standing on our way to move ahead, or thinking futuristically or progressively. In fact, if we go to a depth, much more deeper level, then there is a fear. uh, that is, the fear is the largest obstacle which inhibits the listening. That the people are afraid that if for a moment and truly tries to understand the other person's perception, leaving his or her perception aside, then might be that there may be many things happening. Like, it will be perceived, the person can be seen as that, as an understanding the person's outlook can be taken as an agreement. And even if there is no agreement, or there is a fear that the person may learn something new, which can actually prove to the person that okay, I was not knowing about it, and my belief was not complete, or my thinking was not complete, or my information was not complete. Or the person cannot will not get the chance to put forward his idea, or he won't be listened to, or all these things. And like this, all these things are very uncomfortable feeling, like it's not very comfortable that somebody else is actually trying to overrule me. So so bad listenings, actually, in meetings we have seen, like, I generally, there are so many examples all around us everywhere, that it's being judgmental, mocking, have selective listening, or just nubbing the person if the person is younger, or like passing a wavelength to that person, that you are actually wasting my time, go ahead, complete it fast, like that, है ना? So these things actually actually is what is happening, is that then the focus is lost. And whatever the why we are meeting together for a discussion or as a team, that 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 whole concept is lost somewhere, and the person becomes, that personal trait of that speaker becomes important, not the issue takes the secondary place. And and in a way, in other way around, if we see from the listener's point of view, the bad listener, he or she is actually operating from that second stage ego. I am okay, you are not okay. So this is a very common example which is seen everywhere. And what are the impact is, on the long run, it's very costly. It's very costly because it is going to affect the employee mistrust. And there will be employee mistrust, there will be low morale, there will be less connectivity and low motivation, and the team spirit will be lost. And on the long run, there will be less the all ineffective decision making, and there might be a costly mistake which is going to be, the company will be paying on the long run. So many examples are, live examples are there. And last but not the least, the uh, effect of bad listening is that grapevine effect. Like, if you don't actually, that is, to me, that is the most dangerous effect, because if you're not empathetically and proactively listening and taking actions to the issues what are important to your employees, chances are that somebody else is going to take advantage. and that will be proving very costly to the organization. I will just share a live incident which happened somewhere. Like suddenly there was this one fine morning, the people came to work to the factory, and there was a tool down. So and management was very clueless. Why suddenly at 2? Yesterday it was all fine. Evening night shift also went ahead well, and why this suddenly this tool down? So employees representatives were called, and investigations were made. After few days, it came out that in that premises only, in a certain office, mirror in the ladies' room was broken, and nobody paid any attention to get a new mirror. And this affected all these things. This snowballed into a tool down, costing so many man hours and man hours lost and all those things. This was a case study, and that is there we can see the importance of listening properly or absence of listening.
So somebody would have informed, and it would not have been acted upon.
Actually, ladies told, and generally it's a ladies room mein hai yaar, chalo yaar isse hi kaam chala lo, that sort of thing, not that much of importance diya nahi gaya. And that time lady executives were very less number, only that clerical level ladies are there, and okay, madam ne bola hai, dekh lenge, that sort of thing, and it came to the IR, and then all the investigation, like inside information, it all came out that the mirror in the ladies' room was broken. That was just a small incident, and that triggered so much of snowballed into that much of costly man-hour loss. So that is a live example. Like bad listening can lead to what? So actually, just like it's said, there are ideas lying around. The lack of listening is actually we are not able to get the ideas. So true listening is that if once we put aside our perspective or our mindset aside, and truly make conscious effort to understand the speaker and listen to the speaker, it may lead to a very good decision and wise decision for the company.
That was a beautiful example, Swagata. I think, what looked so trivial at one point in time, it led to such a big business loss at a later point in time. So, and it's all around, and we don't know what are those opportunities that we are losing out on, and what are the problems that we are getting into, and we don't even probably relate it to our lack of listening.
Right.
Sometimes you don't even go to that state.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing that. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
You wanted to say something?
No, I just said that on the way of listening to our consumers and customers, we are actually neglecting our employees. What exactly employees are asking, or actually what is the need of the employee. So on the way, and we are going out with all the policies and decisions and like that, without actually referring to the employees what is actually is needed. So these on the long run are costing to the company as organizations as a whole. It's very, we are overlooking our employees' need. If you ask from the corporate point of view, this is it.
Lovely. I think that's very nicely stated. And I think the bottom line is, whether it is employee, customer, or whoever it is, individual or an entity, it's about trivializing what the other person is trying to say, just because you're overwhelmed with your own thought process and your own perceptions and your own belief systems. And that trivializing can lead to a downfall or loss of opportunities. Both gates are opened just because of this habit of trivializing and others' point of view. And there is so much of over exaggerated, I would say, want for everybody to develop the skill of speaking out and come out with your ideas, speak up in meetings. And I'm sure Neha and Ajanta, when they speak, they will talk about how much we've seen them actually train and coach people and say, okay, speak up. You could not be silent in the meeting. You must
Yes.
speak up. You must have your point of view. So there is so much of overemphasis on that aspect, and people, even if you ask a student as to or anybody for that matter, they would say that I want to be a good presenter, a good speaker. Nobody
Yes.
says I want to be a good listener.
Yeah.
Now there is so much of speaking that is happening. There is so
Right.
much of point of view that is getting expressed, but there is nobody to listen to
No,
it
nobody to
because you're
listen.
trivializing. Yeah, so everybody else is trivializing everything else that the other person is saying. So it's all noise there, and there is nothing that is really. So communication, and once I remember now, and I think Krishnan can vouch for it, long time, many years ago, you know, we used to teach in when communication technology, there used to be this concept of what is noise and what is really communication. So
Yeah.
in our over exaggerated emphasis on speaking up and presenting and saying it out, talking it out, what is happening is that there is so much of talking that is happening that it's all become a noise, and there is nobody to listen to and act to and empathize with what is being said. So I think we've created this chaos for ourselves and losing out on a lot of opportunities, like you just said, and maybe creating opening doors for downfalls to come our way just because we've trivialized many things. And both the reasons it could be that there is so much noise so we can't listen to it, and
Yeah.
the other side of it could be that there is just no effort and no focus on trying to empathize and trying to go to that level. So it not necessarily only employees, but it can go to any entity,
Anywhere,
so it can be
anywhere. In
customer
fact,
or whoever.
live examples are the discussions in TV going on. Noise.
Hmm.
No,
Or
nobody's
noise.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Okay.
That's lovely. I think that's a beautiful perspective that you brought in, Swagata. And
Thank you.
I will bring that point where you said that, we are not listening to our employees. And actually, the face of the organization to the employee is the manager or the leader, if you look at it. And therefore, I think it naturally takes me to Anirban, who has been actually spending several years training, coaching managers and leaders in their professional journeys as they pick up people responsibilities and are responsible for getting the best out of their teams and their the set of people that they are leading now. And I know that I think probably that's the stage that in organizations we start to focus on developing listening as a competency, when people transition from their individual contributor role to becoming responsible for other people. And I know all the MDPs we have listening as a component. So people do touch upon this kind of formal education. Probably most people, if they have been privileged to go through any of these programs, then they get formally educated on this subject only at that stage. And at that stage, I know people like you, Anirban, have been trying your level best to bring in at least awareness, of course, and of course in their quest to master this skill or competence, you do help them. But in your experience of training and coaching all these managers and leaders, where do you see really the challenges are? I know Krishnan spoke about building the muscle, and it's not an easy thing. It's like, exercising every day. And I and Ajanta were speaking in the morning that if the lockdown doesn't go away, our muscles are going to go and we're going to be fatty objects sitting here and there. So we want to really move on. So muscle building is not an easy task. The point is that, therefore, I'm sure that when you are supporting these people, the education is fine. You
Yeah.
can understand that this is important. We understand the 5 levels of listening. But we've heard Krishnan say, we've heard Swagata say, and I can also say once again today, to add to it, that till date, most of us are trying to build the muscle, and we're trying to, be better on this. We know the subject, we know the science behind it, but then still we are trying to master it. So, what goes wrong? What are the challenges we face when it comes to building listening as a competency in leaders?
Sure. Thanks, Deepa. So I think I'd like to address it in two ways. The first is I would call it the inside out view, you know. And the inside out view is a simple one, which is that some of us, we are naturally inclined to speak more than listen. Simple as that, okay? Nothing wrong with that. I mean, if you meet a true extrovert, right? Their mojo, their inner spirit is self-expression.
True.
And you cannot stop that. And it translates as speaking, expressing yourself is speaking. So obviously for them, the proportion of speaking versus listening is a little more skewed towards speaking. And they're naturally not great listeners. That's fine. That's life. Okay. Then, of course, again, from an inside out view, there could be deeper insecurities as well, frankly. Yeah. And this actually plays out a lot in organizations or in organizational settings. And the way it plays out is that, what if somebody has a better idea than me? What if somebody has a better perspective than me? Okay. Nobody knows it better than me. And it comes with years of conditioning and expertise, and you reach a point where those deeper insecurities tend to set in, and they express themselves as a lack of inclination to listen, or in another communication style, a tendency to cut off people, you know uh, and that's also not listening. Yeah. So that's there. Then there is the outside in view, and that's the interesting one. And in the outside in view, there are two perspectives. One is that, like you all rightly mentioned, there's a lot of noise out there today, you know, and that noise is in terms of emails and meetings and social media and whatever you have. And I think managers and leaders are very focused on, being busy, looking busy, delivering all the time. It's become a bit of a culture thing. Yeah. So they're always under this pressure to be seen, to be performing, you know and they do tend to get into an activity trap, which is, I have to be doing something all the time, checking my mails, taking calls, and doing conference calls, or whatever it is. So practically speaking, listening is at the bottom of that list, really. Yeah. I think the bigger issue is something that I'll walk into with a very interesting anecdote. Yeah. And this happened when I was on the corporate side and working for a certain organization. And one evening I came home and I was having a chat with my wife, and she was talking about some problem at work, basically speaking. So after listening to her apparently for a couple of minutes, I don't even know how much time, I started to provide some solutions, you know, give her some advice and so on and so forth. "Ye aise kar sakte ho, waise kar sakte ho, you would do this and that." And so she kept quiet for a while. Then she kept completely quiet after that. So I asked her, I mean, you didn't respond. I mean, I gave you quite a few interesting points. I mean, what are you going to do about this? So she has this very wistful look on her face. And she tells me, "You know what? Once upon a time, you were such a great listener. You know, and these days, all you do is provide advice." And that's the moment I realized that the corporate bug had kind of bit me. Yeah. And I want this to be the segue to what's happening today in the world of work, which is that, to the point that you made, Swagata as well as Deepa, managers are always expected to be on top of everything. Leaders are always expected to have a point of view. You know, um, leaders and managers are always expected to be in charge. Yeah. You'll have heard of things like, "You're supposed to hold the room." You know, and if you're not expressing a point of view, if you're not articulating something very clearly and in very interesting ways, um, unfortunately the corporate culture today is such that it can be misinterpreted as you lack confidence, you're tentative, you're indecisive, you don't have a point of view, you're hesitant to share that point of view, so on and so forth. you know so today, let me be very frank, there's a lot of pressure on managers and leaders to speak and to talk and to express themselves and to always be in the firing line of discussions and so on and so forth. Yeah. And in many ways, I think, um, you know, for them, therefore, um, they have to appear to be know-alls who are very good at what they do, experts, able to solve all problems and able to have a voice in, everything that matters. So the sum of it all is that somewhere the art and science of listening, the art of listening, particularly the deep inclination to understand that listening is an extremely powerful communication tool and that it's required on the part of leaders, that's taken a complete backseat today. Yeah, yeah. And when I coach leaders, managers, this comes up quite often. Quick anecdote: I was coaching somebody, and they said, "I try that my team be creative." Yeah. But my team is completely useless. They just don't speak up. They don't come up with ideas. I've tried this way. I've tried this way. Whatever it is. And I said, what do you think is the challenge out here? You know. So they said, he said that this coach, he says that I don't know, but I encourage them. They don't speak up. Now the background to that, very short and simple, is that I'd obviously spoken to this person's direct reports, and what I had heard from them is that it's very difficult for this individual to listen to anybody's point of view. He will pretend to listen, but at the end of the day, whatever happens is his decision, and that's that. Right?
So there's no point
So
sharing.
yeah, so every time he would apparently try and get them to be creative, the team realized that it doesn't matter. I mean, I'm not going to be heard. My ideas are not going to be heard. Either they're going to be shot down or this guy is going to nod his head, but eventually he will do what he wants to do. So they just kind of clammed up, right? So ultimately we came to this point where he realized that, he was the problem, not the team. Simply because he had very poor listening skills. And he had to prove this point to his team that he was smarter than them. But that was working at a very, let's say, a very unconscious or subconscious level, till we brought it up and it surfaced. So I just want to summarize that. I think, for the forward view, I think leaders really have to set the example by being much more conscious listeners than they are today. And there's a premium today on being able to express and articulate yourself and have a point of view. And culturally in organizations, very unfortunately, there isn't a premium on great listening. That's the truth, like it or not.
True.
So leaders and managers may espouse something, but they're not necessarily practicing it. Very few leaders truly practice listening from the heart and tuning in and cutting the clutter and doing that thing. Yeah. So that's where we are.
And it may, most of the time, may not be to do with their knowing also, as that they are not really listening. It could be unconscious. It could be
it is
something that, most
and
of the
that's
time,
why
like
I
you said, that they're overwhelmed with so much that they have to deliver, and the kind of external expectations out of leaders and managers is such that they are battling with issues of those kind and battling with those expectations, trying to meet those expectations, as against listening. And this goes back to what I started off with, where I said that there is a inverse relationship in what we are focusing and what we are valuing. While we are saying that we want leaders and managers to listen to, and we want organizations to listen to the employees, but what is valued is just the other way. What are we saying? What are we presenting?
Absolutely.
So because of that, we've ended up coming to this situation right now. And I really like the way that it is being rewarded, like you said, the one who is speaking up and the one who is presenting well and the one who is able to talk it out well is the one who is getting rewarded. So as a result, we are further strengthening that hardwiring of being willing to only do the the advisory, as you said, that we're also attuned to providing advice, that there is little attention being given to first listening and then understanding their perspective, seeking to understand. All that is taking a back seat while trying to adhere to what is being expected of us. So that was lovely, and thank you so much.
I'd just like to add one more thing, especially with regard to leaders and managers. I think listening is a expression of vulnerability. It's because when you listen, you're actually creating a situation where you're creating a safe space for people, right?
Yeah.
You're creating a safe space for the other person to whom you're listening. And I think consciously or subconsciously, a lot of leaders are afraid to demonstrate vulnerability. They think that being a great listener means, somewhere I start to look weak, if I'm too empathetic. Yeah. So that's a big challenge for leaders. They don't quite understand that it just works the other way around. You can actually take people along with better listening skills. But unfortunately, a lot of leaders are very scared to listen because they think they're going to look vulnerable. They're going to look weak. And that just kind of, it's an invisible wall that they have to break through. That comes across very strongly in a lot of the interactions I've had with managers and leaders.
Yeah, and relates to what Swagata also said. One is that feeling and looking vulnerable, and the other is their insecurities.
Absolutely.
How can I let go with my thing? Yeah, Swagata, you want to say something?
Yeah, I just want to add to what Anirban has said. Actually, as you go up in the ladder, the sense of insecurity increases.
Absolutely.
You have to all the time you have to prove to yourself, to your superiors, your subordinates, and that's why I know the best. I am supposed to know everything, and I am know all. So that insecurity gives rise to that I am not going to listen. अगर मुझे सुनना पड़ा तो हो सकता है कि मुझे कुछ नया सुनना पड़ेगा. I have to take the responsibility, and I am not ready to take the responsibility. I am the boss. I will ask you to do the work. You have to do it. मुझे कोई responsibility, मुझे तो डंडा चलाना है. That's it. So this is actually a general common tendency to the I will say today's leaders and managers. Though both
that
of
is a
them
very
are different.
Crude and realistic way to put it, but yeah, that's precisely what Anirban also said. But very true, very true. Agree with you on that. So we've looked at. We started off with saying that why are we living in that state of pseudo competence? Why we believe, and Christian rightfully pointed out to the fact that we were never taught, though we were all we experienced this word listening from a very early age. Even before we could start speaking, we've started. We heard this word called "listen to me," but then we were never taught how to listen. We were just told to listen. So I think beautifully Christian brought out what has gone through in the lifetime, because of which this remains to be a pseudo competence for most of us, because we think that we know how to listen, but we really don't know the subject in depth. And then we also looked at what are the repercussions, and it can go up to as big as what Swagata pointed. It can lead to a factory losing several man hours of productivity and business loss. Besides, of course, also the fact that when there are new ideas and progressive methods that are coming way, and all of that gets shut down just because of our inability to listen and look into those opportunities that might be hiding within those ideas that are coming through. And also a big role that our leaders and managers have in nurturing a culture where people are listened to. And I think the worst thing that anybody can go through is that feeling of being not listened to, whether it's a child whose mother has not listened to him. When he said that I have to wear the sweater because my mother is feeling cold, there is so much of pain in it, and we can all relate to it. Most of us have experienced that, because when we feel cold, we have to protect the child and we have to make him wear the sweater. So we do that all the time. We know it. But then it's as simple as saying that the emotional exhaustion that it can cause just by the fact that we are not being listened to is something that is hiding inside many minds. And when it comes to a workplace where, like Anirban gave an example of that team, it can go up to a stage where they stop speaking also, and where they start because they know that they're not going to be listened to. And we are in a way leading to creating less engaged, less productive, and not very optimally performing teams within organizations. So therefore, definitely there is opportunity to examine this aspect of developing this competency, not just in leaders and managers, but overall as individuals and people. Because, like I also gave an example of any student that I ask, or any youngster that I ask to, when mentoring or coaching, they would typically want to know, okay, please tell me how. I want to be a good speaker. I want to communicate well. I want to speak well with people when I go to the interview. Nobody ever, they don't even know that nobody comes back and says that I want to listen better, or I want to be a good listener, because that is not spoken in the society. That's an area which is lying in the management development programs that L&D heads would probably initiate when they are promoting people from individual roles to managerial roles. And that's when people like Anirban will come and educate formally, or Krishnan will present the 7 habits and say that, this is something that you need to develop. But till then, we are living in an unconscious, incompetent state. And therefore, most others who have not experienced this, they continue to live in that state for many, many, many more years. And plus the complexity involved in developing this as a skill. It's something like muscle building, which, and I like Krishnan's way of putting it. It's staying in my head now, and therefore it requires a lot of exercise, a lot of repeated practice for us to build. And till date, most of us are struggling to be better listeners. I can never say that we can ever master listening, for that matter, but we are struggling. And you can go back to that state of not being able to listen at any point in time when you put your blockers on there. So I want to spend some time with our language and communication coaches, Deha and Ajanta, on just trying to understand. You've all been practicing a lot of global curriculums and whatnot, and trying to coach and train people with communication skills. Whether it is the basic ones to be more effective communicators, or the ones which is to do with developing accents and working with different cultures and all that. You've done quite a lot there, and you follow, and there are many global frameworks which help in developing language and communication abilities. And you've spent your life doing that. So I want to understand from you that in these programs and courses that you conduct, how much emphasis in oral, and I'm specifically pointing to oral communication, verbal communication here, and the 3 components of presenting, conversing, and listening. In our current programs, in our existing programs, uh, how much of emphasis, what percentage of your efforts goes into developing listening as a competency? And what do you notice are some of the struggles that your learners face when it comes to learning listening as compared to other aspects like speaking and matching the accent, or reading, writing, etc.? What challenges do you see these people have, your learners have? And we'll start with Neha, and then I'll come to Ajanta to take your point of view also. So Neha.
Thank you. Thank you, Deepa. Well, when it comes to communication training, the first thing that we actually struggle with, not just our participants, but actually the struggle starts with when we get the requirement, whether it is from the management, leadership team. They just say communication training. We just want a communication training. Now that actually, if you go back, it starts from, even when you read the resume of a person, they say, oh, excellent communication skills. Now they don't understand what is communication skills. To them, it seems, to them, what it means is just communication skills is equal to speaking in English properly, which is just a very small part of it. And we've heard this in the discussion. So listening is the most important communication skill. However, like we've been speaking about the order, Deepa spoke about the inverse relationship. The way that the order that it is taught is that, the writing is 9% actually, reading is 16%, speaking is 30%, and listening should actually be 45%. However, the percentage somewhere when we start working or we get the requirements is listening is not given so much importance. And even when, to such an extent that when I got this invitation to speak, and I was like, listening is, for me, I've been a trainer for so long, and listening seems like just the ability to use my ears, which is like, even right now, if I go and I talk to either one of the esteemed people who are speaking right now, will probably be listening is equal to just hearing, something that we spoke about, hearing noise. But listening is so much more than just using your ears. And first, you need to educate the managers. My struggle starts from there, that if you want communication skills, what is it that you're looking for? Because everything comes under communication. Um, Telling them listening is not just the ability to hear and speak in response, but much more than that. And one thing that I'm going to take back from here, and I'm definitely going to give 100% credit to Anirban. I think he said that listening is an action of vulnerability. And somewhere we think that to be vulnerable is not something very good. We taught to be hard with the pressures that we have. Somewhere we go along and just come to a point where we stop, and at the end, fine, I've heard everything from you, Miss Trainer, but communication skills is equal to let them speak. So the struggle is quite a lot. Ideally, I would like to include much more in listening skills, because listening skills is not just hearing, like how I said, but also being empathetic. And being empathetic, you have to listen to the person first, understand what they're going through, or what is it that they're looking for, whether it is a, you're a leader, a salesperson, a manager, a doctor, or a trainer. It does not matter. It is crucial to listen effectively to people if you want to persuade or influence them. Without listening, the job does not become easy. In fact, you jump to conclusions. In your mind, you're probably doing the same thing. What, one of the lovely stories that I heard was, the wife comes and she's talking, and at the end, you're like, okay, I think you should do this. So, according to me, especially in the IT field, the kind of trainings that I have done, I feel one of the biggest stumbling block is knowledge. It just stops us from actually giving the value. Deepa said it very beautifully, where the value lies and where the focus should be. Um we should listen because we may get an insight of the person who's speaking to us, maybe something that we haven't thought about before. We build relationships and we establish rapport within the company, not only within the company, but for customers, the clients that we have. Um, and this value that we were talking about, I'd like to say is that sometimes what we really appreciate, people really appreciate and really, really value, and sometimes even more than the compensation, is that they've been heard. It is one of the basic human needs that needs to be answered, other than just coming to conclusion, analyzing things, looking at whatever we should do, the hard skills when they come into picture. Soft skills are very important. And well, now coming back to the question that was asked, now increasingly the awareness has grown, but not as much as I would have liked it to be. At the end, again, the listening skills is probably restricted to communication training, which is voice and accent. Cut to cut. Are you able to understand the accent? Okay, yes, let's go ahead. It's not about that. It's about the requirement that you may have. It's about understanding what the other person wants, using not only just the ears, using not only just the eyes, using not only just the mouth, brain, but the heart also. We've spoken about the different levels of listening. We've spoken about the different types of listening, when to do what type of listening, and that awareness needs to come. Uh, for any kind of requirements that we have, I was actually, once I received, I was very curious to understand what are the top 10 soft skills in demand nowadays in 2021. And to top it all, it was communication. And like how I said, I started off by saying listening is one of the most important skills that comes under communication. To understand that is very important. When it comes to training, not only just restricting it to voice and accent or soft skills, if you talk about it actually stands as a basis, fundamental, like a lay, fundamental lay for any of these training programs, whether it is teamwork, whether it is decision making, managing and supervising, whether you're dealing with customer service or negotiation or sales. The basic ability of listening, I think we just need to change and give it a little more importance and go back to giving.
Yeah, so you're saying that it is there in the curriculum, it is there very much when you have it as a trainer to deliver, but then the way it is understood by your clients, that itself is the first roadblock. That there is lack of awareness, that there is lack of understanding, because in the top 10 skills that you searched for, you got communication skills, and the layman understanding of communication skills is the ability to talk in good English.
Completely different.
So that's what the person is able to talk good English and is able to communicate. He's a person who is able to communicate well, according to most managers and leaders. And as a result, the lack of awareness and understanding in the clients and your customers itself is an impeding factor as far as trainers and coaches, for you to be able to really deliver what is there inside the curriculums that are globally followed. Ajanta, you want to add on to that?
Yeah, Neha said it all, almost like 80% of the things she covered. But however, I would slightly alter, in few points, because the requirement of listening skill doesn't come to us. When the first things comes to us is, they should know how to speak. Then they should know how to present themselves in front of the client. This is the major requirement that we face, and the listening skill takes a back seat. Nobody even mentions about it. So if you ask me personally, I have no challenges in teaching listening skills, because I teach it out of, or I take it out of my own interest, because the first language that we learned is not by learning from someone else, it's by listening. Whatever your mother language is, whatever your mother tongue is, the basic is listening. We have, no teacher has taught us the first language that we ever know to speak. But however, when we come to this corporate world, or even in the schools, academics, anywhere, the first thing, the students should know how to speak. They should know how to debate, argue. This is what is a personality trait. And in this whole personality trait, in the fight of effective listening, we have stopped listening effectively. This is the most effective skill that we have stopped listening. That is now the thing is all about, how to present, how to make your listening skill as your primary skill. This is a lot of research work is still going on, because no one takes not even a single pointer to even understand that if you just listen to me, my 90% of my problems get solved. As
if everybody learns to listen, then we may not require so many good speakers also.
Speakers, yeah, that's the main thing. And the psychology, the mental blockage.
What the other person is
saying. And it depends from groups to group. I would say if it's a one-on-one session, listening is very interesting, then you would listen. But when it's in a one-to-many or many-to-one, there's a term called pseudo listening that has taken a lot of place rather than effective listening. Now, pseudo listening is what, we are listening word to word what the other person is saying, what the other person has to say. But in the same time, we are fighting amongst ourselves in the subconscious mind. what will I have to speak? What will I have to say? And in this fight, in our subconscious mind, we are losing the habit of listening properly. So if you ask me personally, I would say listening is not a skill, it's a habit. First, as Krishnan mentioned, Anirban and everyone, Swagata, they all mentioned that if you listen, 90% of your problems will get solved. But why we are not listening? Because we are in a fight to create our own presence. So when we are in a fight to create our own presence, create an impact, like how we discussed in the last session, people who have not seen it, you can watch the previous session that has taken place of creating impact, that you will understand we are in a fight, we are in a rat race of creating impact, and we are not listening to what our heart has to say, what our mind has to say. So when it comes to even selection processes, like I have been a part of many recruitment boot camps, I have not been given a chart where there is a parameter for listening skill. I think Swagata would also agree to this, that there is no chart graphs where mentions what is the listening ability of that particular person if you are to hire him. What is this presentation skill? It is there. What is the conversational or, group skill? It is there. People skill there. Negotiation skill there. But listening skill is nowhere in the bar chart of when you are hiring. It is there in the colleges, in the campuses, when they train on personality development. It still exists till certain percent, 10% or 15% it exists. But when you come to the actual world, the corporate world, it is not there. So we have to really find out ways and processes to improve this in our hiring processes as well. Then it will reach to the higher level with all the pressure all the leaders have.
So both our communication coaches have very articulated it very well, that it is not that we don't have the tools and the equipments, we have it, but then you don't ask for it. You ask for the other things, and that's why we aren't able to help you any further. Neha, you want to say something before I move to Jaspriya?
Yeah, I just wanted to quickly just say that I agree with Ajanta, what she just said. It's not the techniques. The techniques to learn listening skills are very easy to follow and easy to, it's not difficult to part. The difficulty lies in what you just said, making a decision. Making the decision to work upon it is the hardest, the hardest thing to follow. The rest of it is the easy part. Our part, what Ajanta said, I do it because I like it, and that's how it happens with us. I'd like to just quickly also say that it's a skill because, skill is a term that encompasses the knowledge, competency, and ability to perform tasks. And the good news over here is that you can develop it. So, I mean, that's like a positive note I'd like to probably just close it with, that, of course, we can develop it by learning, learning through our experience or through studies or by training.
Yeah, and as we talk about developing this as a skill, and thanks for saying that, and giving that confidence that it is definitely possible. It's just that it requires a little extra effort and that awareness that there is more than what we think it is. That takes us to one important aspect or dimension of listening as a competence. And for that, I will go to Jaspriya. And I think, Jaspriya, your emotional intelligence is something that has come as an important ability or competence to have in almost all the soft skills that we spoke of since the beginning of these sessions, career derailer sessions. And I can see a close relationship with listening as well here, because when we talk about listening and how other speakers have highlighted the various levels in which it can, the competence actually builds up. We are talking about active listening as not just being able to listen to the words that are coming through, but also going beyond the words and using, somebody said that, Neha, I think she said that not use only the ears as a complement, but there is more to it. And looking for feelings of the other person, caring about what they're saying, empathizing. And the most important aspect is to keep our thoughts and our judgmental perspectives and perceptions aside for that time that you're listening to the other person. And like Krishnan's example of keeping your shoes out of the outside the temple. So like that, how do, and that's where I feel that the biggest struggle for most people is, because when you're listening, you want to care for, you may empathize, you know, all of that may be there, but your unconsciously, your perceptions and your hardwiring comes and blocks the way, right? So how does emotional intelligence in such scenarios, how can emotional intelligence of an individual really help him or her in becoming a better listener, in your view?
Thank you for asking that question, Deepa. And I mean, after listening to everybody, I don't think there is much that I can add to the whole conversation. And we're also running short of time. So, so I'm going to quote a little bit from everybody, what all the speakers have spoken about, and I'll start with Krishnan because he's the one who started. And the term that he used for listening was the highest level of listening is empathetic listening. So it goes beyond just active listening. Active listening is just, you know, getting involved in the conversation, but empathetic listening is where, you know, all the things that everybody has spoken about, you know, listening to emotions behind the words, and all of that comes into play. So when it comes to EI and listening, it's a chicken and an egg story, actually. You know, it's very difficult to determine whether higher EQ or EI helps you to be a better listener, or working on being a better listener makes you more adept at understanding emotions or improve your EI. So you know, it's a full circle. So one thing leads into another, and you can't separate the two. But there are a certain a few points that you have to keep in mind to become a better listener from the perspective of EI. And you know, one of the most important things that we've talked about is cutting the clutter. So we come with a lot of baggage of our own, you know, whether it is you know, our own side of story that we want to talk about, or our prejudices, or you know, our past experience, or external environment. So like Anirban said, inside out and outside in. So those are the two you know, aspects where, you know, there could be a lot of interference with listening. So mindfulness is something that really helps you to sort of you know, focus and stay centered when you are in a situation where there is a lot of clutter. And that's not something that you should practice only when you are in a situation. You have to constantly work on being mindfulness, and you know, practice being in the moment, so that when you are in a situation where there is a lot of noise around you, and you have to practice an empathetic listening, you're able to focus and you're able to center on what needs to be listened to. So that is something that obviously takes time. And it's not just this part of you know, uh, emotional intelligence which is pertinent to listening. We also need to understand that the need to be heard also has you know, great impact on emotional well-being. Because we have in this discussion talked about, you know, how everybody wants to be good at communicating. Now we want to communicate, or we want to be good communicators, because there is an underlying need of being understood, which means that we want people to listen to us. And so listening is an integral part of communication. You can't forego it. And definitely being a good communicator helps in making sure that other people listen to us better, because at times we don't listen because the communication also falters at some time. So coming to the point that, you know, from the other side of the story, it is a basic need of every human being to be heard, to listen to. And if that listening environment is not conducive, then obviously it also causes a lot of emotional baggage. It can lead to a person withdrawing, losing confidence. And you know, so that's why collectively it becomes our responsibility to be good listeners, not just to facilitate our learning, but also to encourage people to you know, express and be you know, made felt important, and acknowledge what they're going through and their emotions. So that's important. Just one point that I want to make after listening to all this, we're talking about, you know, listening to find solutions, and you know, understanding the whole story. One thing that I feel is very important, that at times listening is required only just for the sake of listening and not giving any advice or any solution. You know, I think that's most effective, because at times that's all that a person needs, that they are just able to find a platform where they can just express themselves without getting any advice, response, or solution in return. Just the need to be heard. That's about it.
Very
That's how you
beautiful.
make strong connections.
Yeah. So certainly, it's a psychological safe space that you
Right.
are building, and if at all, I mean, with whatever we could discuss, what is really coming through clearly is the fact that the root cause of this whole concern that we've had with this incompetence that we have in the society is largely to do with our misunderstanding or our overwhelming focus on a particular aspect of communication, which is to do with speaking and presenting, as against the other components, which are probably more important and have not been given attention to. So, what probably is something that needs to be done is to bring the attention to the other components. So, bring the focus to what is being valued more. I think that is one thing that needs to come through, and therefore, listening cannot be only into the MDPs that organizations ask for in leadership and managerial development when they have to have people managing other people, but it has to go much ahead of that. And as soon as the clients of Ajanta and Neha, they learn how to uh, look for communication as an ability and the various components within it, probably it can have a much better impact on organizations rather than focusing only on the speaking and presenting ability. Because I think if there is, and we somewhere during the discussion, we also felt that if at all we could give half the attention of what we are giving to speaking and presenting to listening, probably we may not require so much of that bringing everybody into that same mold of being great presenters and great speakers, because everybody will tend to then look towards understanding other people's perspectives. So we will foster an environment which will thrive on intimacy, which will thrive on eliciting other people's perceptions. Like Jaspriya just now said, you are getting the perception of the other person, trying to get to understand what is going on in their mind. So we will create a more healthier and psychologically safe and stress-free, lesser stress. It may not be completely stress-free, but maybe less stressed environment around us, and therefore a better world to live in. So 100%, it's an area which has not been looked at and given that kind of importance that it needs to be given. And therefore, there is a lot that can be done, not just in educating the managers, leaders, and organizations, but educating everybody around the fact that this is something which needs to come to the forefront. And probably we have to, little bit of fading down has to happen on the presenting and the speaking and all that. It's important, but then we can reduce the noise. There is so much of noise because of that, that listening has taken a backseat. And in order for listening to find its space, we have to create some space by, toning down on speaking and presenting a little bit, and allowing to create space to seek to understand others, to actually get to find what is happening in other people's minds. And I think that is where there is scope for a lot of improvement in the society. And the way we look at it as parents in our families, the schools and colleges, as well as in organizations, I think there is a long way for us to just bring this aspect into focus. And once we have the focus, I know there is enough that is available, and our trainers have spoken about it, that there is at least that it can be done. It is not that it's not a skill that cannot be acquired. It requires effort. Krishnan said it's a muscle, so it needs to be built. It will take a lot of repeated effort, and without but yes, it is definitely going to yield results if we put efforts towards it. So Agatha, you wanted to add something? You said, yeah.
Yeah. In our organization, as I said, that we are having this winning together. the program. This is a flagship program in our organization, and we in that communicate. There is a module communication skills. So there we are actually concentrating on the listening habits, developing, inculcating the listening habits with different kind of activities, and the results are beautiful. Like we also make the bosses and the subordinates come together and do activities. So at the shop floor level, working level, there has been improvement actually. So feedback have come to us that the program is really good. And actually, if we are as an organization, we are conscious towards listening as a competency, then it's many things can be done, and there will be actually improvement in every segment of the organization then.
Absolutely. Now I'll open it to all the panelists in case you want to make some closing remarks. Yes, Krishnan?
Thank you. So I spoke about building muscles, because skills, all of us know how to build the skills. And as Jaspria said, there's something called EI, the chicken and egg story. The other part is EQ. So wherever you see the letter Q, that's basically the muscle. The quotient is the muscle power. And now building muscle requires repetitions. We call it reps. So you do 10 push-ups every 1 hour, you build reps. So she talked about mindfulness. So I practice mindfulness for about 2 to 5 minutes every 1 hour. So it's like drinking a glass of water every 1 hour. And that builds a lot of muscle strength. So what are some of the ways we can build it? So first thing for listening is the pause. The noise is not just outside, it's within our head. So can we just put a pause to it? So imagining that I'm pausing, it's like, breathing exercises that allows you to quieten the brain. Doing that 2 minutes every 1 hour. Now, when we come on the Zoom call, we all put ourselves on mute when somebody is talking. So practicing this, imagine somebody is talking live and imagine you're just pressing a mute here. So you can't speak. And we have the ability to watch movies on Netflix. So we watch a 2-hour movie and we can't speak to the TV. We just listen. So we have that power. So imagining that we are watching a movie and just listening to them. So there are so many practices of building the muscle from mindfulness, as Jaspria said, but doing it every 1 hour, 2 to 5 minutes. That's very important. It's not like doing once in the morning or once at night. And so I can teach a lot of these muscle building exercises maybe later on, and still building it. Yeah. Not a master at it yet, but definitely they help. Then talking about vulnerability, about listening. If you just consider a court, it's the lawyer who speaks a lot. And it's the judge who listens the maximum time, but the judge is the most powerful guy. So listening gives us a lot of power. As long as we understand that listening is power, it's not vulnerability actually. So there are many exercises which we need to do in the mind again and again and again. And that's what this muscle building is all about, the reps. Vulnerability comes from, so think about it. We all have running skills. We also have walking skills. Skill wise, we have this. Now we may be able to walk 10 kilometers, but we can't run 10 kilometers. That's because the part of muscles in the legs that are used for walking are not the same set of muscles that are used for running. So in the brain, the vulnerability comes from the limbic system. It's a different set of muscles. And listening and being calm requires the prefrontal cortex. So there are different exercises for the PFC. And if you do those exercises, definitely the muscle also gets built, the listening power also goes up. So it's a combination of both.
Absolutely.
Just wanted to share that.
So that
one more exercise you can try. We all know that words, in words, tone, and body language matters a lot. So one of the exercises I tried doing is watching movies with mute. So can you just see the scene for 10 minutes without listening to the dialogue and understand what they are saying? That's also a good exercise.
The lip movements and, watching and
but there used to be mute movies at one point in time. I remember there were movies that were made which were mute, which only had.
You understand a Charlie Chaplin or a
Charlie Chaplin, yeah. Charlie Chaplin used to be.
Power. We are just not utilizing that power we already have.
Absolutely. It's like, it's like having 4 limbs and using only 2.
Yeah.
If we're not using the hind limbs, and probably become better at running. It's just the focus is on speaking, presenting, and we're not utilizing and leveraging our capability to listen, which is there inside. It just needs to be developed and built up. So I think that was a beautiful discussion. We've got generated some really good insights and collective wisdom, which should be used and leveraged not just by us as each one of us to have got to hear from other people in the panel, but also for our listeners and viewers who would watch this video as they get time. And hopefully it should support them in their ability to build listening as a capability. So thank you so much for making time.
If I can share, I wanted to thank you for bringing all of us together. It is so nice to see so many new people, and I really enjoyed listening to all of you. Thank you so much for sharing your views. And it made me smile a lot. So I was thinking, me green should be, respelled MEGRIN. You make us grin a lot.
Green.
That's a good one.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you so
you.
much, Christian.
Thank
And we
you.
really
Thank
look
you,
forward to
everyone.
more
Bye.
such
Thank you so
discussions.
much.
Thanks, everyone. Thank
Thanks.
you.
Bye-bye.
Aditi, you
Thanks
want
a
to do
lot.
Thank
some
you so
closing note?
much.
Yes,
Over to Aditi.
definitely.
Goodbye.
Well, thank you so much. Thanks, everyone. I think after my entire listening of 1.5 hours, I just want to add on to one thing that listening, what Krishnan, when he was talking about exercises, it struck me regarding one of the things I'm writing these days is about listening to your inner voice. So all I could see and understand that listening is one of the most powerful tool if used properly, and it can actually lead to only soothing and calmness rather than speaking is one which can lead to a lot of confusions and complications. So listening could be the one of the most powerful tools there. And thanks a lot. I've absolutely enjoyed this discussion. And like it said, one of the most common quote is like, silence says it all. And that is which is one of the things that we use the least. And with this note, I want to thank all our panel speakers and our live viewers for attending this session. Please subscribe to this channel. And without taking more time, I also want to express deep gratitude to Deepa for living her dream and founding Me Green India to work for the cause of sustainability and sustainability of careers. That's it. I think I have some questions. Just give me a second. Oh no, it's just a compliment. Thank you so much. It was an interactive discussion. Thank you. Thanks to all live viewers. And with this note, we can end the session. Thanks a lot. Have a nice day. Bye.
Thank you,
Bye.
everyone.
Have a
Bye.
good
Bye-bye.
day, everyone. Bye.